You're hanging out with comic books from coast to coast. I'm Joe Leonardo. I'm over here on the West Coast. I'm hanging out with Alexander Turbin. He's over on the East Coast. What's going on today, Alex?
Hey, Joe. We're looking at some awesome artists. We're going into the second round of the polls and the head-to-heads and stuff. And last week we had Sam Keith and Magnola, and Magnola pretty much trounced Sam Keith. So it's looking like we're going to have a Silvestri Magnola battle at some point, which is pretty insane. But then this week we are choosing wilce Portacio and David Mazzucchelli, who won their previous rounds. I think Portacio handily defeated
Rob Liefeld.
Rob Liefeld, and Mazzucchelli beat Michael Turner, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I do recall that. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a trip too. Because I would, it's like we were talking about just before the show started. A lot of the time, it's the material that these artists work on that really elevate what they've done. And it's like Michael Turner. He's a fantastic artist, but he never really, other than like Witchblade, which is kind of like a niche thing. He never really landed something that really people bit into the apple so much. Like Mazzucchelli or whatever, who did Batman Year One.
Right.
That's the big significant piece in his life. You know what I mean? Can you imagine the royalty checks that guy gets every year from that thing? Like,
yeah, but like when you're talking about the stuff that they've done, so much of that. Are you talking about sales? Like, when you're talking about success?
Well, yeah, I guess that is what I'm saying. Like, what I say is like something that they're known for, or whatever. Like whatever big piece, like when you say that person's name, what's the piece of work that pops into your head?
Right. Because I mean, like myself, I'm mostly known for Mutandis, but that is probably, I mean, it's not the least thing that I'm proud of, but it's certainly not the biggest thing that I'm most proud of. But that's what I sell most of.
We're going to change that. It's going to be Entropy Alliance in the future. Watch.
Well, there's a lot of things that I think I would like to be more proud of. But also, it's like when you have an artist, and especially back in the old days, not so much now, but like back in the old days, they were started on small things, like a short story or whatever, a backup or whatever, and then they were on. It's like kind of like you look at Jim Lee's career. What was his first thing? I can't remember what his first thing was.
Well, I mean, his first work is Alpha Flight. I think is professional stuff or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was maybe just
he does
covers.
Some underground work before he gets hired for the big companies. There's
right,
like this Samurai Santa Claus book or something.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. What is it? Santa Claus, Samurai Christmas?
Yeah, something like that, and it's pretty famously his very first piece of work ever published.
That's why it's so expensive. Because I have that I have that Samurai Chainsaw Massacre, and that's really not that popular. And I was like, why is the other one so popular? So yeah, that makes more sense. But yeah, like he just climbs the ranks of Marvel, and then he went to that Punisher, and then onto the X-Men. So it's not really like, it is opportunity, but it's also like you're making a name for yourself. So you're creating that opportunity yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, so many people that, you have to come on to something that is lesser so often, and that's where people start. And I mean, Alpha Flight is a great book to start on, but it's not like it's everybody's A thing. But then, you have the opportunity to take it and make it into something that people maybe think is fantastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's also that's the telltale signs of a really prolific creator. That's why people loved Frank Miller on Daredevil so much, because Daredevil was not terribly meaningful before Frank Miller got his hands on it. And then all of a sudden it became very, sort of like prolifically admired, because he took the concept and just added a few, secret 11 herbs and spices to it, and all of a sudden it was this thing everybody like had to get their hands on, and a lot of creators can do that. It's not like Thor was on this super massively popular run when Walter Simonson took it over. But when Walter Simonson got his hands on Thor, all of a sudden it was fantastically popular,
Yeah.
because it's not, it's a combination of the things. It's not just the artist and it's not just the concept. It's when they both come together and then the two of them, will affect one another in such a meaningful way. That's one of the reasons why I think I like Wilce so much, is because, as I was mentioning to Alex earlier before the show started, that he created Wetworks, and I just thought that was an awesome idea. Basically, I just thought it's like sort of like Predator with monsters or whatever. You know what I mean? It's sort of like Predator, but they're hunting werewolves and Draculas and whatever other kind of like urban mythos creatures, you could think up, kind of thing. There's even like a Frankenstein backup in this issue right here, because Frankenstein, I mean, he's bringing all the classic monsters into it and saying like, oh, what if these things were a plague to humanity? And isn't it a fun idea to think of like a Arnold Schwarzenegger style Terminator freaking style Predator group of dudes out there that hunt these things for us, and of course it's got the symbiote thing, because that was so so popular at the time, because Spawn has the symbiote thing going on, and Venom has the symbiote thing going on, and it's just like right there in the 90s when it's a new idea. And you have the Terminator 2 guy who's like the whole chrome dude or whatever, and it's like, what an amazing idea. Everybody loved the chrome guy in Terminator so much. How about the whole Predator team is covered in chrome, like, you know what I mean? So he just keeps pushing the ideas hard.
So do you think his Wetwork stuff is more well known than his X-Men stuff?
I think honestly, I don't know, and that's probably not true. I mean, probably the X-Men stuff is probably better well known, but I like Wetworks. I mean, honestly, I think Wetworks is one of my favorite comic books of all time, and it's not because it's like a rad comic that's written really well or any of that stuff, and that's something we need to talk about in the future too. Like, I would like to talk about the different styles of writing, because like everybody talked about how they didn't like the Image style of writing, and I can understand that to a certain extent, but also I did like a lot of the writing that Image did, but in certain aspects, not everything. Because like there's a difficulty to writing a comic, because it's like, it's not like a novel, like where you're sitting down and you're writing this very long narrative, but also it is like a novel where you're sitting down and doing this very long narrative. But unlike a novel, you have to do it in like little pieces, and you have to keep each piece involving enough so that they're willing to come back and go to the next piece. And then you hope at some point all the smaller pieces align together perfectly and make a meaningful, poignant thing at some point, and that's a hard thing to do.
So last week I asked you who your favorite comic book writer was, and you didn't really have one, and you kind of gave me the impression that you didn't enjoy comic book writing at all.
It's not that. Like, I mean, that's not that. See, I mean, I'm a cynical dude, and maybe I sound that way. But on all honesty, I love comic books and I love to read them. And I like a lot of comic books that people will say is bad. Like, I've had a lot of people say that they thought John Prophet was unreadable and just it's nonsense. And that's true. Okay. But I still
it's not true. Books. It's not true. It's your personal preference. If you enjoy it and you love it, then it's not bad. It's just
I get what they're saying. But I can stand back objectively and understand why they have that opinion. You know what I mean? Because it is a noisy book that doesn't ever seem to go anywhere, right? It doesn't. It just like Spawn suffers from that, but it goes in bigger circles. Okay, but Prophet, because it never really. I mean, I don't think there's 30 issues of that book. I don't think, you know what I mean.
I don't know. Really I don't think I've read it.
So it doesn't do very much, right? But each small episode is kind of fun to read, right? But like 3 of them in a row, they don't go nowhere, and they turn around on themselves, and it becomes nonsensical. You know what I mean? Because they're not telling a larger narrative in a meaningful way. They're more concentrating on making, little tiny incidences that occur that seem entertaining in a small draft. But over time, that stuff becomes brain numbing. You know what I mean? It becomes white noise. So I can understand why people say that kind of thing. But on the same, hand, you might look at the writing on this thing, and it's pretty, it's solid as heck, and it's a lot of fun to read, and
I think
He,
I,
Portacio
I
wrote
I
most of
had
this
this
himself.
I had this discussion on Instagram with somebody. There was some post about Moon Knight and the Marvel TV shows, and he was saying that he had all of this negative stuff to say about it, and I was like, well, that's your opinion. It doesn't mean, simply because you say that there's plot holes and there's all of this literary jargon that you're saying, doesn't mean that's true. It means that is how it is for you. Um, so it's
Yeah,
everybody's personal preference. I loved Moon Knight. I loved the writing. I didn't think there were any plot holes, so it's
yeah,
all
I don't have a
everybody's
problem
own
with the Moon Knight
personal
show. I thought
preference.
it was pretty good too. I liked Moon Knight. I watched it 3 or 4 times, the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
season
I
or
loved
whatever.
it. So
I really love what the costume, how they made it like a mummy thing or whatever.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Um,
mean, it's so much personal preference, but people just think they get so entrenched in their own ideals and their own opinions that they can't see that writing it's not like science, it's not math, it's a completely personal, completely opinionated thing. So one thing
yeah,
that is horrible for one person is, golden for another person.
yeah. No, that's all true. You just don't know what people are, gonna enjoy or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why I do things to please myself. You know what I mean? Like, and you can always count on me to pleasure myself. Okay, but
Yeah, yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
like when I do
We've
a
had
comic
that
book,
discussion.
like I do it, like everything is designed by what I think is rad. You know what I mean? And if I don't think it's rad, then I probably won't throw it in there. When I write how I think is rad. And if you don't like it, then you might not like it, or I might be even a little heavy-handed as a writer. Like my books are pretty prosy. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah,
quite a bit of speaking and dialogue, but it's not even necessarily like. It's more like just instructive terminology where I'm just like reading you a story that is kind of like what is happening on the page. Like it's less
yeah,
about like being like inner thought or that kind of thing, or like the character being like, oh my god, I hope I could punch this guy, or I just punched him through a wall, or him getting up and
right,
be like, I
right.
was just punched through a wall. Like I just try to keep it like, make it feel like you're reading a book, and like the pictures on the page are like what you're seeing in your head. You know what I mean? I guess you know what I mean. Like I
Yeah,
guess that's
yeah.
kind of like the approach I try to take. And I don't try to over dialogue the characters. I mean, I don't talk that much as a person really in life. So I don't think my characters probably speak that much. And I always kind of have a rough time dialoguing characters that just talk to each other. You know what I mean? Because I'm not that great at that myself.
All right. So we've talked about Portatio a little bit, and let's talk about David Mazzucchelli, who he's one of your people.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Right?
he's awesome, dude. Like he's, the Batman Year One, he can't freaking get by without thinking about that. It's a seminal piece of work. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this is completely different than Year One and Born Again and anything else he does. I know that he's not a big fan of superheroes, or maybe he just got tired of them or whatever. So he went off and created his own indie comic book. I don't know how well this did. And when it was made. It was made in 1992, and you can see my copy was eaten by like some kind of rodent or something. Um,
is that
which is
before or after year
unfortunate.
year one?
This is 92, so this is after Year One and after Born
Okay.
Again and stuff. So, but it's funny how so many artists, especially, well, I'm not going to say especially, but just a lot of artists, as they grow and as they mature and as they get along in their artistic careers, they kind of their lines get heavier, they get thicker, they get bolder. And it's more about just big shapes. I mean, look at this stuff is just such big, bold lines. As to whether or not you like it or not, I love it, but it's
Yeah, I
so
mean,
different.
it's curious, and you always wonder. Well, I mean, like his stuff is always like that ish. You know what I mean?
It
Originally, he's
is.
deriving much more information, but he's just getting down to a more impressionistic feel on the page is what it looks like.
Right.
But
But when
the
you
thing
look
I'm
at
curious about is like what drives this kind of approach. You know what I mean? Is like I wonder, was this a speed thing? Was this him just being like, I want to do this, but I don't want to spend this much time on it? Did this take more time than, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there when he created it. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, like,
it's a
because you might
fantastic
look at it
question.
and think, like, oh, well, he's doing this to be faster, or he's doing this because he wants it. He doesn't want to put that much effort into it. But honestly, we don't know. It may be more difficult than doing, the work from year one or something. You
It's
just
a
don't know.
fantastic question. Frank Miller did the same thing when he went to Sin City. That is obviously a lot less detailed and a lot more impressionistic, like you said. Do you think that he's just being lazier there?
See, like, I don't know about that, because see, like that's a good example, because Sin City, I would almost say it's actually like in Sin City, the detail level is turned up significantly than most of the things that Frank Miller has done in his life, I would say. But it's turned up in an unusual way. You know what I mean? Because it's that negative, like, it's that photo negative thing that he's creating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, when you look at when you look at all the detail that goes into what's that big dude's name with all the bandages on his head or whatever?
Marv.
Okay, like a classic Marv drawing. There is
Yep.
because he's doing that reverse negative thing. All the code is made up of all these separating white, lines, and the face is made up of these billions of separating white lines, and he has to
Right.
ink in between all that, and it's significantly harder, I would imagine, and probably takes way longer than like the art he did in Daredevil, which is basic.
See, but not really, because it's a lot. There's definitely a lot less ink work in any of the Sin Cities than there is like Ronin. I mean, you look at Ronin,
Oh yeah, see,
it's
like
almost
Ronin is
like
this high, like as far as detailed stuff, Ronin is probably the most detailed. But at the same time, Ronin's not that good to me. You know what I mean? Like
right,
the work
right.
on it, I don't really enjoy it. I don't think it's very good. Now it's very detailed, and there's a lot of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But for
yeah,
my personal opinion, I just don't.
yeah.
I just don't think it's very good. You know what I mean? It's like not
I
like
I
any of that
think
art really makes me go like, whoa! Like a lot of it is wasted effort. I
yeah.
would say. But he's like
I
trying to
think
do a
that
manga thing.
well, he was definitely trying to do a manga inspired thing. But I think that a lot of artists, like when I was at Kubert's, one of the things that they said was one of my teachers was like, well, first he was talking about brushes, and he was saying if you use like the smallest brush, or you use the biggest brush, no, use the smallest brush. You're going to make less money than somebody that uses a bigger brush, because they can get the finer detail with the bigger brush that somebody uses with a smaller brush. You understand what I'm saying?
I suppose, yeah. Maybe your talent level is just better if you can do it with a
Right,
bigger
right.
brush.
So also you have, if you can draw something and have it look good and be believable and have it, have it all of those qualities that you want, but you're using 5 lines instead of 3,000 lines, who's better off? You
Yeah,
know?
that's the trick. But see, the tricky thing is like, just like we talked about, it's like, is it faster or is it easier? Okay, like, because like say a lot of people, will look at Mike Mignolia's work. And I
Yeah.
mean, recently his stuff has, like he does sort of like do this sort of like stunted version of what he's known for. Okay, like like some of his sketchy
It's
stuff could be really
less
simple.
detailed,
Yeah, it's less and
less
less and less.
detailed for certain.
But when
Yeah.
he's working in his normal parameter, like when he does a Hellboy story or something like that, he gets to that certain level, or like when he did Dracula or whatever we're used to looking at, that we look at and we go, this is Mike Mignola. He talks about how it's not fast and it's not easier. You know what I mean? Like it isn't. It takes him a long, long time to do those pages. Some of the pages 30 hours, some of the pages are 18 to 25 hours. You look at it and think it's fast, but it isn't, and there's
Yeah.
that element too, so you just don't know. Like you might be looking at something and thinking like, oh, the whole causality behind this is because he doesn't want to put that much effort into it, or he's trying to go fast and get this all done because it'll make more money or whatever. The reality could be very different, that, that this thing you're doing takes way more time than the thing that other people perceive as lesser or more. You know what I mean? You just don't know, because we're not there when the artists do it,
Yeah.
So you can theorize about it, but we can't really ever sit there and be like, oh, it has to be like this. Because I've heard Mike Mignola say on multiple occasions that it's not fast. His style is not fast. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And you might look at it and think it is. When you look at that and compare it to something like Silvestri or like Jim Lee or someone who puts a lot of lines down, it's a lot of lines down, and can really make something beautiful from it. Someone else can come along and put down a few lines and make something almost as meaningful, like Jay Lee and Jim Lee are good examples of that. Like, they have very similar artist styles in quite a few ways. And Jay Lee is almost like, he's almost like the bastard child of Jim Lee, and like someone like Wilce Portacio, like this image right here with all this dark on it. And you take someone like Jay Lee, who incorporates both of their, like, like say their types of character and the way the fluidity of their characters look, and that kind of like beautiful line that makes up the human function, the way they'll draw it. But he's taken it and really gotten rid of a lot of the hatching, and he's gotten rid of a lot of the little lines that make it up, and just turned it into more of a stacking shapes on top of shapes, type of thing with lighting points on it. And, it's very effective. And I know he's significantly faster than both of these guys, because I've seen him at cons doing sketches, and he's pretty quick, and his stuff is still very beautiful. You know what I mean? And it's all just really based on like lights and darks, sitting next to each other. And, he doesn't throw down a bunch of thousands of lines like a Silvestri or, someone like that. And it's still fantastic. So,
Right. Definitely.
Mazzucchelli, is so unusual. I do think that's fantastic, and it's so brave when artists can decide to do a more broken down style. I think that also speaks to a level of success, because I think you probably have had a certain measure of success with what you were initially trying to do, to be brave enough to do something like that, where you're like, I don't even care, what people think about the art. I'm going to do it in this really kind of like impressionistic style that, will allow me to create something that gives you a mood. Because Jim Lee will talk about that with art a lot. He'll go, everyone will look at the art and they'll go, oh, he does this right, and this person does that right, and oh gosh, the muscles are all right, and the buildings look great. And he's like, and all that stuff could be fantastic. He goes, but what you really need to be asking yourself is, how does this piece of art make me feel? And that's the most important thing of all, is like, does it make you feel something? Does it make you feel like, whoa, that's heroic? Does it make you feel like, oh, this is sad? Oh, does it make you feel like that's powerful? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the kind of thing like great artists are capable of doing. They make you feel something when you look at their art,
Yeah. And also, I think, talking about that, I think the real root of great art versus mediocre art, in your own eyes, especially me, is the layout and the just the layout of it,
I think that's a big part too. Correct. Because honestly, that's something I scour other comic books for, and that's something I really rip other artists off a lot too, is like, just layout and composition. You know what I mean? Because like everyone's always like, oh, somebody stole someone's nose, or somebody drew eyes like someone else, or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. But it's like, dude, that like still in good composition. You know what I mean?
It's just composition. Composition is really key. Like, if you don't have the good composition, then you can put as much line work and noodly stuff in there that you want. But if it's not great composition, then it's not going to be a great piece of work, no matter what.
This is a gorgeous example of that. We have these like all these purple figures here, and like these guys are all in darkness, and then as we get closer, we see this like, and he's like, he's still doing his normal thing. There's so much black on this page, like it's mostly black, but he's keeping you all informed, and all of the ideas are all there. He's still giving you the full shapes of everything. So he's not completely hiding it. And it's not like he can't draw it either. He doesn't go like, I'm going to throw black down because I can't draw this. It's not like that. It's there to add feeling, and it's there to add composition. You know what I mean? The black leads into this big dark figure right here, and these beautiful like drops of blood coming from his eyes as he cries over the figure he's holding, and we all lean back to the most, it all builds up to this emotional moment right here where the figure is bent and head bowed, and the tears are pouring or whatever. And look at this shoulder; it's just these beautiful scraping lines. You know what I mean? Just like
yeah.
And I mean, it makes you feel something. And it's the composition of it. It's working towards this beautiful, like almost Frazetta-esque like stacking thing, that he's doing right here with this sort of like Drew Struzan like movie poster style superimposed face behind it, like composition,
It's composition.
It really is.
Definitely.
I'm a little jealous that you got to go to, not a little jealous, I'm insanely jealous that you went to freaking, the Kubert school and got to have a little bit of schooling on the inside from those guys.
Dude, you could still go.
I have $80,000 in student loans. Trust me, I'm not going to any more schools.
You can still go. I think it's still open. I 100% would encourage you to go. Yeah, it's your dream, right?
Oh, dude, my dreams are meaningless to anybody but me.
I know, no, but people go back to school, go back to college all the time at older ages than us, and so you could totally do it. I don't think that. No, I do. You would learn a lot. Everybody learns a lot just by being there. One of the great things is you would be focused in on your art. You wouldn't have any other kind of things. So I'm just saying you could do it if you wanted to.
I'm a poor person, Alex.
I know. I understand. I understand completely. Definitely.
Yeah, just a regular poor guy. But that's an awesome thing. I mean, I remember seeing those ads in the books and just dreaming about going there when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I mean, just like you said, I mean, so much of that is the camaraderie of working with other artists and getting to see what other artists are doing. And that's one of the great things that like we get from hanging out with the other artists that we hang out with online, because me and Alex are part of several different groups that create comics together, and we'll work with other artists, and we'll all do these little vignette pieces and put them into books together and then feature them, and it's a lot of fun, and it's always super cool to see what our artists are doing. And you get influenced a lot, and you learn a lot by being around other artists who are continuously putting their work on the page every day. And a lot of these guys are working hard and putting out stuff every day. I mean, I draw a lot, and there's guys out there that just make me look lame. By Paul Courtjohn. I mean, does a day go by when he doesn't put up something?
He's a master. Yeah, he's definitely busy. Same thing with Adam. Blood Desert. Blood Desert.
He's drawn all the time too.
He is always drawing. So but I mean, it's everybody's personal situation on how much they can do.
For sure.
But we got to wrap this up a little bit. So your choices in the next poll are going to be wilce Portacio and David Mazzucchelli, two awesome, fantastic artists. Now, so if you think I put a picture of this up against a Wetworks or something that Wilce did, do you think that would be affected if I instead put a picture of Year One or Born Again against Wetworks and stuff?
Well, I want to say you might want to at least give them a fair. Well, it's hard to know because, like I said, you just never know how people are going to react. Maybe because, like he's done much bigger things. You know what I mean? Like he's done Batman. And, well, I don't think Wilce has ever gotten a chance to do Batman before.
That's a good question.
It's kind of mind blowing when you think about it. You would think he would be a no brainer for something like with such a dark theme. You know what I mean? Because his art has such like darkness to it or whatever. Yeah. But who knows? But I mean, I think they're both great. Obviously, I like wilce Portacio way more because he's more of a detail, do a lot of lines guy. I never really liked Mazzucchelli that much. I had to grow to learn to like him over time, and I do appreciate him now as a more rounded author or whatever these days. But there's still the sense that I don't know if those guys are ever going to be as entertaining to me as the Image guys. You know what I mean? The more the more grounded dudes who are not about the flashy, put an anchor on every page storytelling stuff. You know what I mean? I'm always going to struggle with liking them a little bit less, like the Tim Sales and so forth, even Frank Miller, falls into that category for me. Like they're never quite as fascinating for me. And then we hit guys like John Romita Jr., who are like kind of got both of that vibe. You know, he's like got one foot in the image universe and one foot in the old world aesthetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somehow he manages to pull it off, you know, like. So yeah, dude, like what's cool to see, like honestly, everybody just go out and vote what you love. I think maybe you should probably, you know, put up something that's a little bit more commercially known by Mazzucchelli.
I'll put up the Born Again stuff.
People might not even know what that is, that thing you just showed, you know what I mean? Even if it says Mazzucchelli on it, they might not make the connection, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So got to make it fair, I guess.
Might be cheating, yeah, unless you put up something that he's well known for artistically, you know, so that people at least have a chance to really understand what they're coming to the table for, you know.
Yeah. So you want to end it out?
Yeah. We need to be wrapping this up because you know, we want to keep it short and keep it sweet for you guys. I'm a comic book creator. My name is Joe Leonardo. I'm the creator of Six Lords of Sound. This book has been given 5-star reviews by every single person who's ever got their hands on it. I'm so incredibly grateful to anybody out there who took the time to buy a copy. Now, recently I have like a few people who are trying to get their hands on copies, and I will get copies to you guys as soon as I can. Alex is in the process of printing some more out, but I am completely sold out of this on the initial run. And I just want to say thank you to everybody out there who like bought the comic, got involved, and helped me keep interested in creating it. There will be more of these coming out, but right now Alex and I are working on a new project together, and he has that over there on his side right now.
And it's the Entropy Alliance #1 that is I don't know if it's out yet because we haven't really had it for sale or anything. But I guess if you contacted Joe, we could get you a copy. But we're going to put it. All of the creators have to get their copies first, and then we'll all figure out selling and everything. But it's it's the Entropy Alliance, which is started out as the idea of getting a group of artists, and we would each create our own superhero, and they would all become part of a superhero team. So this is all superhero goodness, and we've got pretty much the same bad guy, the Reclamation, but there's some great stories by Jamie Barrows and Charles Delgado, and much more. So it was really fun with a super wraparound cover by Joe. But also, I have my own comic book that I put out every month called Random Access, which is a full-size, full-color, 12-page comic book that you get every month from patreon.com/Alexander Turbin, or you can go to my website, alexanderturbin.com, or you can just message me at alexturbin0441 at either Instagram or Yahoo, which is my email and my Instagram, both. And this is the newest issue, came out last month, and it introduces a new sword and sorcery character that I've been deep into. So check those out, and I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, really nice looking colors there too. Nice, and the new color, you know, comic book. You guys gotta come out, man, and get your hands on the color comics, dude. There's not that many creators doing the full color books like Alex is. So definitely want to get your hands on it anytime they come around.
Yep. All right. So thanks for watching. And remember, go vote on the poll, Mazzucchelli or wilce Portacio, and we will see who wins next week. And until then, keep on creating.